This is Laricy Live, and I'm your host, Matt Laricy. We're giving you unfiltered access to the world of real estate, where we can cover the market trends, news, and honest answers to keep you ahead of the real estate game. Laricy Live is brought to you by Lincoln Title. Lincoln Title is the best and most efficient title company in Chicago and is the best place to close your property. Laricy Live is brought to you by Guaranteed Rate and Ben Cohen. Ben Cohen is the #1 lender in Illinois and can close your loan in as fast as 8 days. Okay, so today we're talking about a little something that happened abruptly, out of nowhere. We'll call it out of left field, the N.A.R. settlement, where it states, and everybody is doom and gloom, the world is going to end. I'm just announcing right now, guys, this is our last podcast. I'm going to go work at Walmart. I'm going to be... Little Jimmy, aisle 15, go get your new transformer. That's what I'll be doing from now on. That's what the media is telling us that we're going to be doing, is that realtors will no longer exist, and everybody will automatically, starting July, be buying and selling on their own. This is what they are saying. I'm just repeating what the mainstream media is saying. So let's take a look at what this settlement is, okay? And that's what today is. Today we're talking about some facts and some opinions on the actual settlement. So the settlement states that a realtor does not have to belong with the N.A.R. So the N.A.R., the National Association of Realtors, is our ruling governing board. Buyer's agent's compensation cannot be displayed on the multiple listing system, also known as the MLS. So you cannot display commissions on the MLS. Buyer's agent compensation will be arranged off the MLS and negotiated during offer presentations, and that starts in mid-July. If you are a realtor, you do not need to put your listings on the multiple listing systems. If a buyer agrees to work with a realtor, a buyer compensation agreement will need to be signed. So these are pretty much the biggest changes that are going to be taking place. These are some seismic changes. Now, that was quickly me reading through some of the main changes, and it may not sound like much, but those are seismic. Moving forward, we could probably expect, people who are looking to buy are going to be signing, buyer agreements. We are probably going to see that people do not need to work with a buyer's agent in order to buy. And here's the thing, guys. I think this is very, very clear to know. You never, ever, ever had to work with a buyer to buy a place. Let me say this again. You never had to work with a buyer in the first place. Now they're saying that if you do work with a buyer, or an agent works with a buyer, or if you're a buyer out there, you work with an agent, you're supposed to get an agreement signed. I don't know why this is so crazy, but this is what the big fuss is about. And they're also saying if there is a seller not offering commission, the buyer themselves will have to pay it. In reality, guys, the main thing is that the courts didn't like that the seller paid the buyer. They didn't understand. It was like, why is the seller paying for a buyer to have services? And that's what they were thinking. Now, I don't agree with this, because I'm also like, well, it's not really you're paying this buyer agent to, the buyer to have some sort of reputation. You're kind of paying to help sell your property. It's part of the cost to sell. And I'm going to get into some reasons here on why I think this is ridiculous. And as much as ridiculous as I think this is life. I'm not here crying about it. I can't change it, nor do I care to go to become like the guy that's going to run the court system to change the system. I don't. I don't have the time for it. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I'm telling you why I think it's important to have an agent and what changes what's going to happen in the industry, when changes are going to come out there, because I think both buyers, sellers, and consumers and realtors all need some sort of direction, and nobody out there is spitting facts. They're all just talking about, I don't even know, some of this stuff on the mainstream media, I don't even understand what they're talking about, and I'm in the business. They're just like making up stuff, such as like home prices are going to fall 30%. Like, what? And we're going to talk about this. So let's look at some facts. Let's look at what's coming of this, and why I think it's important to have a realtor, and what do I think is going to change. So first off, there's one thing for sure that has come of all of this, is that I've realized just how much people hate real estate agents. I mean, people hate realtors. So myself, probably just having this, if this goes on the internet, I'm sure a bunch of you are going to tell me how much you hate my guts. great. I feel good about myself. I realize, what are they calling us? A used home salesman instead of like a used car salesman. I mean, there's been a lot of memes on Instagram and TikTok lately, and I got to tell you, those comments are brutal. People hate us. And I went out of my way to try to read as many as possible to kind of like ground yourself and realize that like you just have to understand how much the general public absolutely and utterly hates real estate agents. We are probably the most hated people on the planet, and we are public enemy number one. And I understand why some people hate realtors. I think this whole lawsuit came into fruition because our reputation in the last few years has taken a tremendous hit. I blame a few things. First off, I blame COVID, okay? And I think it's because when COVID got locked down, realtors were one of the few people that were allowed to work. I called it the golden ticket. We were essential workers and we were able to work. But guess what? A lot of industries could not work. And a lot of industries got laid off. So when people got laid off, what did they do? They're like, I'll get my real estate license. And because it's so easy to get your real estate license, everybody got the real estate license. And then because everybody was working from home, nobody was educated. So you had all these people who got these online real estate certifications, then went and worked for a big online company that has no presence. They had no education, and they started selling. And a lot of people were buying places super quickly. So people were buying a place sight unseen day one. And you have Joe Schmo, who's never sold a house before, who knows nothing about real estate, that walked up to a door. He sold a house, and he got paid 2.5% to 3% commission. And the buyer's like, what the hell did this guy do? And then he disappeared once that contract was signed, and who knows if he even drew it up. And then the people are like, well, I don't know, but that guy just made a little bit too much money. And then you got the TV shows where you got these girls on Selling Sunset who are wearing, tens of thousands of dollars of dresses. They're driving Lamborghinis. I don't have a Lamborghini, by the way, and I'm the biggest agent in Chicago. I do not have a Lamborghini. And again, I'm the biggest agent in Chicago. But they have these women who are in these provocative, expensive dresses that are sitting around talking smack about each other, drinking mimosas, going to these unbelievably great parties, driving these super expensive cars. And then they're like, yep, that $10 million house just sold, cha-ching, $300,000. And the general public that's like, I'm making $60,000 a year and this girl's living the greatest life in the world. I hate realtors. So yeah, our reputation took a hit. Our reputation took a hit because a lot of people were able to get into the business very easily during a time that the market was very hot. And I'm actually appreciative of the settlement and the fact that people are going to be leaving the business in droves. I expect 50% or more, 50% of all realtors and realtor offices will close. I am telling you right now, 50% or more. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 75%. We're going to lose more realtors and real estate offices than we did after the '08 bubble burst. This is going to be a bloodbath, and I get it. I'm not saying I'm excited to see people lose their jobs, because guess what, guys? There's a lot of people who need to feed their families out there. I know there's a lot of these TikTok comment people that don't give a shit that somebody just lost their job and aren't going to be able to feed their kids anymore. Good for you. You're always talking to me, and these are always the people who are like, I'm so humanitarian. I'm so for everybody's rights. But they're like, haha, you just lost your job. You can't pay your kids. You're going to be living on the streets. F you. It's like, I call that a hypocrite, okay? But I'm not here calling anybody a hypocrite. I'm saying that, look, the reality is, 50% of realtors are going to lose their jobs, and they're going to have to find something else to do. And the reality is I don't think it's a bad thing, because I do think that one of the things that could have helped settle this settlement, and instead of getting rid or trying to get rid of buyer's agents, what they should have done is make becoming a realtor harder. They should have made it be like a college degree. You need 4 years education if you want to become a real estate agent. How many people are going to become a real estate agent if you got to spend 4 years in classes to become a real estate agent? How many? Not many. And then when somebody works with somebody, they'll be like, this guy's really good. He's been educating himself and interning at places for 4 years before he can make money. Now, let's not do that. Let's make the course 21 hours to get a license and then just try to get rid of half the people. That makes sense. But that's why a lot of people hate realtors and our reputation took a hit. Now, if we look at people saying like, well, we're not going to be doing real estate agents anymore. We don't need buyers. It's like, okay, well, let's look at some of these things of why buyers are so important. And I also think it's important to know that I blame a lot of sellers out there. A lot of these lawsuits came as of lately because sellers were pissed they had to pay commission. And I'm sorry, I think sellers are greedy. And I'm going to get a lot of hate when I say this, but let me put it this way. You hired a guy or a girl to do a job. They helped you find a property, educated you on that property, and then that property went up over 50% in the last 3 years. So this person steered you in a direction to make a purchase that gave you a 50% ROI. So you made 50% ROI. And then when you turn around and sold it, you had to pay money because you made 50%. You had to pay as much as 4 to 6%. And then you're mad, but you made over 50%. What other industry in the world do you pay less than 5% to make 50% of your money? Does anybody out there invest in stocks? Does anybody out there have a portfolio? Does anybody else out there put their money in a bank? Have you ever used a credit? Do you use a credit card? You do know it takes 1.5 to 3% every time you swipe that bad boy, right? You know that. You do know that. Every time you swipe your credit card, 1.5 to 3%, every time. I could guarantee you in a 1 week period, you get charged more in bullshit fees than when you do a 50% growth in your asset. So I think a lot of this has to come with greed of sellers. To make money, you got to spend a little money, guys. I know it sucks. I know you hate us. I know you hate my guts. I'm sure just looking at me makes you mad, okay? But the reality is that like if you hire an advisor, they're going to get paid. Nobody does anything for free. And if you don't like realtors, don't use them. That's what this lawsuit is. I'm actually excited to see what's going to happen to a lot of people who think they can't use realtors, because I'm going to get into our failure rate with unrepresented buyers. But we'll get into it. Greed of sellers. And then what about who's going to be representing these buyers? You know, people are like, well, now buyers don't need agents. You never needed an agent. Let's be clear on that, guys. You never needed to have an agent. I represent the most listings in the city of Chicago. That is just a statistical fact. I had the most listings last year. I closed the most listings last year. I should be happy. I'm going to make more money. I am. It's not even questionable. If I have the most listings and I'm going to be able to charge more because there's no buyer's agents, I'm going to make more money. I'm going to be more profitable. So I should be excited, but I'm not excited because I like people. I actually want to see people get helped. I don't want to see buyers get effed. And let me tell you something. Who's your rep? Let's put it this way, guys. There's a buyer. I had a property yesterday. I had 6 offers on it. Highest and best was due at 4 o'clock. You're a random buyer. You call me at 9 o'clock. You're like, hey, Matt, I want to get in there at 2 o'clock. Yeah, I don't want to do it. But I want to get in there at 2 o'clock. Not my problem. Are you a buyer? Yeah. And you're unrepresented? Yeah, I got 5 offers, dude. Not my problem. It's literally not my problem. It's a Sunday. I don't want to show you something at 2 o'clock. Not going to do it. How many agents are going to say that? How many? You have no shot at that property. You didn't even have a shot. Was 2.5% worth getting the house of your dreams, maybe? I'd say so. What about who, like the suburbs? 99% of suburb agents go in on lockboxes. Who's going to let these people in? How are these people going to access properties? I really want to know. Is a listing agent going to show in the suburbs, going to show the property all the time? I think they should. By the way, let's be super clear on this. I think a listing agent should always show their listings. We show our listings every time. We don't do key with doorman. We don't do lockboxes. We're always present. But considering 99.9% of America doesn't do it that way, I'm going to be excited to see. Or are you just going to let a buyer on their own? Does anybody care about safety? Just out of curiosity. Do you think of buyers with people literally murdering people in the streets of Chicago? You ever go on Chicago Critter or Citizen? Do you ever see any of this stuff? You're just going to let some random people in on a lockbox? Do you think people are going to make sets of keys on site and then maybe go back there later on? Kill you while you're sleeping? That sounds crazy. It does. It sounds crazy, but it's like, dude, I live in reality. I live in the real world. There's some really sickos out there. What about them changing the locks and then just staying in your house? And with the new squatter rules, people can do that. Just let some random person in your house. They'll change your locks. You come home with your whole family. Your keys don't work, and you got a guy living in your house. Call the police. They can't do anything. 3 months later, you might get him out. Is that worth it? But hey, you saved 2.5%. Way to go. People aren't thinking outside like what this really means, okay? It's important to have a buyer's agent still. You need somebody to help show the place. You need to have somebody that's qualified to help show your property. What about price inflation? This is one of my favorite ones. They said this on CBS today. And by the way, CBS, learn how to do some math, okay? They said this on CBS today. They're like, prices are going to fall as much as 10%. First off, most people only charge 4 to 6%. Where's 10% coming, okay? Second off, you still got to pay a listing agent, okay? Because if you're going to list your property, you're not selling it by yourself, you still got to do it. And most listing agents are going to be charging more now because they're going to be doing more work, okay? I know that people out there are like, I'm not going to charge my person more. Good luck. You want all these services, but you want to pay for it. You want now you're just adding more services and more time, but paying people less. Makes sense. But prices are going to fall. Let me put this in perspective. As the guy that represented the most sellers in the city of Chicago last year, statistical fact, okay? I have never in my life, and as the guy who has the number one market share, met a seller where your neighbor sold at $500,000, and then you're like, hey, Matt, I'm going to list mine at $475 because I'm not paying any agents. Never met it. But the mainstream media is out there telling you that now every seller is going to drop their price because they're not paying a buyer's agent. That's what they're telling you. Is anybody actually believing this? If you're believing this, you are probably one of the dumbest people I've ever met in my life. I'm sorry to say it, but you are. You are. If you think a seller, you've never sat down with a seller in your life. I sit down with sellers 7 to 8 times a week. They always want more. They never want less. I never say, your neighbor sold at 500, let's list at 450. Like, no problem, Matt. That sounds like a bang up idea. No, do you know what they say? They say, hey, my neighbor sold at 500, I want 5.25. My house is better than John's. I put a nest in and some, new blinds that I got from Walmart that cost me $10. But since I spent $10, I deserve $25,000 back. That's every seller in America, guys. If you don't believe me, go on a listing appointment. But yes, now that they're not supposedly going to have to pay a buyer's agent commission, price is going to drop. Wake up. Honestly, just wake up. Buyers are going to get effed in this because now you're going to be paying more because prices ain't coming down. I'm telling you right now, prices are not coming down, but you're going to pay more because prices are not only going to go up, but you're going to pay more because you have no idea what you're doing if you don't have a buyer's agent. That's why it's so important that you still believe in having buyer's agents. What happens in a bad market? The last 3 years have been a whirlwind for sellers. The average market time in most parts of the country has been 5 days or less. It's been great. You put a property on the market, 400 people want to buy it, it sells. Let me tell you something, guys. There's this oldest saying in the book. It's one of the oldest sayings since humanity, and I think it's super, duper important you actually realize what it is. Please pay attention to this if you're going to pay attention to one thing. History repeats itself, okay? I'm going to say that again. History repeats itself. Do you know how many people wanted to be a listing agent from 2008, like at the end of 2008 to 2013? From 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. That's 6 years. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 6 years, guys. 6 years. 6 years. Nobody wanted to be a listing agent. Do you know why? Anybody? Can anybody hear me? Do you know why? Because you couldn't sell a listing. You would drive down a neighborhood and for sale, 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 for sale. Turn, for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale. Turn, for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale. Stoplight. Go. For sale, for sale, for sale. That's what it was, guys. You think I'm messing around? Think I'm making this shit up? You couldn't give shit away. What are you going to do if you're a seller and you can't sell your property? You're not going to pay a buyer's agent? Right now, it sounds great. You're like, I can put my place up, I get 50 offers on it. I don't need a buyer's agent. Okay. What do you do when there's 50 houses on the market in your neighborhood? And you guys all look alike. That's how most of America is. They're all suburbs. All the houses are kind of the same. They all look alike. They're all priced alike. Somebody says, hey, I want to buy yours. You got to move to Tennessee. You get your place on the market in Arizona. And you got to go. You got to move for your job. Your house has been vacant for 6 months. And somebody's like, hey, I want to buy it, but I got a buyer's agent. It's 2.5%. You're going to tell me no? Here's how I know you're wrong. I live in Chicago. I live in the real world, by the way, in Chicago. And I live in this place called River North. In River North, Gold Coast, Streeterville, south part of Old Town, the Loop, the New East Side, parts of the West Loop, and the South Loop, you can't give shit away, guys. You can't give it away. I have one of my own places on the market. I'm telling you right now, I'll give you 2.5%. I'll give you a $50,000 bonus to do it. I'll give you $50,000 on top of 2.5%. I will. I won't think twice about it. I wouldn't even bat an eye because I got to sell it. I got to sell it. And every seller out there, if I want to bring an offer to somebody who's been sitting on the market for a while, not only will I ask for 2.5%, I ask for bonuses. I'm like, listen, I'll give you an extra $5,000. You think a seller's going to say no to that? They've been on the market for 300 days. 300 days. Does anybody out there know what it's like when a property sits for 300 days? Do you have any idea? I have 4 listings, 4, that I've had on the market for over 3.5 years. 4 listings. I'll tell you right now, if I brought an offer to one of my sellers right now on one of those 4 listings and said, hey, you got to pay 3% commission to a buyer's agent and an extra $100,000, I bet you they would take it. Just want out. Just done. They're just done. So you're telling me a place that's $350,000 has been sitting on the market for a year and a half that people are going to pay buyer's agents commissions? Is anybody out there even like actually understanding what not having a buyer's agent means? The whole point of having a buyer's agent is to help you sell your property. You need somebody else out there. Do you think there's people that, and everybody's like, well, just go online and look at listings. It's like, okay, we meet people online all the time. And I have one of the highest close ratios in the country. And I convert 1 out of 10 people. I have a 10% conversion ratio, okay? And out of that 10% conversion ratio of the people I meet online, those are people who eventually buy something. We have less than a 0.5% chance of somebody who sees something online and buys that place. So you're telling me that somebody's like, yeah, I'll just go online, I'll buy it myself. Okay, well, you got 0.5% chance out of 100 that person's going to click on Zillow and actually buy your property. So how's this going to work? How? I mean, come on. How? People are crazy, and I get it. People hate realtors, and buyer's agents are greedy. They suck, okay? But let's look at reality. I live in the real world. I actually sell properties. How is this going to work? What about negotiations? Who's going to be negotiating this? You do realize that, like, if we don't have buyer's agents, you as a buyer, you're going to negotiate against me. You're going to negotiate against Matt Laricy. And I'm sure somebody on TikTok or Instagram is like, I could take you out. Yeah, I'm sure you can, buddy. Your dad bought 4 properties in his lifetime. You can out-negotiate me. I'm like Ari Gold in Entourage. I'm a fucking animal. You think you can out-negotiate me? What are you, nuts? I'm going to mislead you. I'm going to manipulate you. And I'm going to get you to pay so much more you're going to have no idea. And you know what? My job is to represent the seller. That is my job. My job is to, in a legal way, manipulate you to pay the most money to my seller. That is my fiduciary responsibility to my seller. I've sold over 7,000 properties in my career. I sell more properties in a day than your entire family has an entire lifetime. You're going to come against me on your own and beat me. That's like one guy going against the Roman Empire. I'm going to squash you like a bug. And I feel bad, though. I do. I actually feel, I'm an asshole, but I'll tell you, I feel bad because, like, I know I'm gonna crush you. It's just not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair for you to come against me. It's just not. You're coming at me with like fists and I got like an atomic bomb. It's just like, dude, come on. Every time that we have a buyer come to one of our properties unrepresented, we have a 70% failure ratio, meaning that 70% of the time a buyer comes to buy our listings unrepresented, the deal dies. Because here's what happens. They go on everybody, and this is every TikTok or Instagram guy out there is going to comment on this one. I can't wait. I know what I'm doing. I've done this. I read it online. I'm the best. And I'm like, okay, we're under contract. Send me over your offer. Well, how do I send over an offer? I don't know. Draw it up. Find it online. Well, I don't know how to do that. Okay, well, I can't. I don't represent you. And it would be illegal for me to send you a contract. So, like, go online, find a contract, fill it out, and send it to me. But I don't know how to. Okay, call your attorney. My attorney wants $2,000 to fill it out. Okay, pay him $2,000. Hire an agent. I don't want to hire an agent. Okay, figure it out. They finally figured out how to give me a contract. I completely crushed them in negotiations. Like, I can't even tell you how badly I beat them. It's like I'm almost like laughing. Like, I'm like, we got this guy to pay this. And they're all like, really? I'm like, no, seriously. I got him to pay that. It's like, okay. Then we go under contract. 5 business days go by, guys. In Chicago, you got 5 business days to have a licensed property inspection, have your attorney review the contract. 5 business days passes. Those guys already given us our earnest money. They're like, hey, I want to do the inspection. I'm like, you missed your inspection. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you missed your inspection. You had 5 business days to do it. This is the 7th day. But why didn't you tell me? I'm sorry, excuse me? They're like, why didn't you tell me I had to do an inspection? I represent the seller, dude. My job isn't to tell you how to do this job. You remember everything? I know everything. Remember that? Remember when you said that? And now I said, well, listen, I don't represent you. You represent yourself. Like, now you lost your earnest money or you don't do an inspection. But I don't like it. You're an asshole. Blah. I'm an asshole? You told me you know everything and you know how this works. Okay? I represent the seller. I have a signed listing agreement for fiduciary responsibility. My job is to make sure you don't do your job. That's my job, is to make sure that you fail. That's a whole agreement I have. My seller pays me money to make sure you fail. And you failed. Don't get mad at me about it. Forfeit your $1,000 earnest money or don't do an inspection. And I feel bad. I do. I feel bad. So it's like I could see the train wreck happening. I could stop the train wreck. But I'm in an agreement to not stop that train. I can't. My hands are tied. I'm being paid by somebody else to not do that. If I told you, I would be breaking the law to my client. So I have to watch the train wreck. Train wreck happens. Everybody goes nuts. I can't believe this happened, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, dude, sorry. I'm sorry. You said I know everything, but you didn't know everything. You didn't know how it works. And I can't tell you, you got all these TikTokers and Instagrams. I know how real estate works. Real estate agents are scumbags. Listen, a lot of real estate agents are scumbags. 100%. I hate most real estate agents. But the people who actually know what they're doing and care about their job, they're very good for you. They're very good for you. But if you think you're going to go in this on your own, and you think this settlement now all of a sudden just reduces prices, I'm telling you right now, this is me. It's going to be terrible. Whenever I do a deal with an unrepresented buyer, it is an absolute and utter nightmare for everybody. My sellers are pissed off because nothing's ever right. They're like, why is this so difficult? I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I can't tell this guy stuff. You want me to tell this guy stuff? I will. But now I'm going to weaken our negotiations. So you're my boss. Should I help him out? Should I not? Well, don't help him out. Okay. Well, this is going to be a miserable experience. Real estate's about to get a hell of a lot harder if people don't have buyer's agents. I can't stress enough how important a buyer's agent is, guys. I can't stress enough. And who's really going to get screwed? And everybody out there tells me, I'm for the people, right? You're full of shit. You're a goddamn hypocrite. Because if you're for the people, you're for buyer's agents. Who's going to get burned the most out of this, guys? This is what I'm so pissed off about. I'm actually for the people. I care about people. You don't. Because let me tell you who's going to get really screwed on this. You got 3 to 5% down. You got to get closing cost assistance. Well, guess what? You can't get representation because you can't pay for it. So now you're on your own. But now we're going to tell all these kids in these neighborhoods that want to buy their first house that good luck, buddy. Figure it out on your own. And then guess who you're going to go against? This asshole. Is that fair? How's that fair? And you want to sit there on your little fucking high chair telling me how you're for the people. Fuck off. You're not for anybody. You're for yourself. You don't even understand what it's like to be for people. I'm for the people. I want them to have representation. I want them to have the dream of homeownership. I want them to have the dream of fair rights and be able to have people to represent them so that they can be guided and understand what they're doing and to make sure that them and their families can have hopes and dreams and understand the real American dream is the dream of homeownership and that they get to have that. But you wanted to take that away from them. You did, not me. So who wants equal rights? I do. And how fair is that? And you know what's going to happen? Here's what's really going to happen. Again, I live in the real world. So now here's what you guys signed up for. This is what you wanted. Corporations now are going to go into these neighborhoods. You think it's not going to happen? Just wait, my friends. Corporations are going to go in these neighborhoods and going to buy up all these houses. They're going to buy them up, and then they're going to raise rents. And that's going to push homeownership away from these people even further. And they're going to be paying more money. Who won in that? It's disgusting. It really is. And that's what you voted for. And that's what you wanted. And when everybody out there is talking about, oh, I want equal rights and all shit, shut up. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because these people are going to get screwed the most. And it pisses me off beyond belief. Because they deserve to have those rights. Guess who else gets fucked? Veterans. You're sitting on your couch. You're sitting on your little TikTok. Woohoo, I hate realtors. Okay? You got a guy running towards bullets in war. Do you know what it's like to run towards bullets in war? Have you ever driven a tank before? I haven't. I'll tell you right now. Do you know I haven't? I'm too big of a wimp. I am way too big of a wimp. I will first hand a minute. I got to jump out of a plane, I'm probably going to shit myself and probably die because that's how big of a wimp I am. But the vets aren't. The vets are jumping out of planes. The vets are allowing us to be able to sit in our fat asses and read Instagram and do whatever the hell we want. So I could sit there and eat pizza like an asshole while they're sitting there serving our country. But guess what else about veterans? They put 0% down. Now they don't have representation. They don't got the money to do it. They don't have money to buy themselves a buyer's agent because they're out fighting for their country. So while they're out fighting for their country and you're sitting there on TikTok, these guys now don't get representation. Sounds really fair to me. They gave 4 years of their life to fight for our rights. But at the same time, we're not willing to give them representation. That's a fucking great thing. I love that. God bless America, right? Man, I'm loving what's happening here. Let's not give them any representation. That makes a lot of sense to me. So how is all this any good for anybody? I think people should have representation. I think people should have equal rights The reason that all of this came to fruition is because all of this came to a boiling point in the 80s, and people were sick of all the stuff that I just said happened. And they said, we need to fight back. We need to make sure that we can have somebody represent us. And so they created the buyer agency, and we did the thing where you split it up in half. And is the system great? No. Is it perfect? No. But no system is. It's got its flaws. But it gives people the opportunity to have the chance to be able to have representation. Now, I'm not saying there's not a lot of shitty realtors out there. And I'm not saying there's not a lot of things out there that people have taken advantage of the system. I'm not saying that. I would promote to have realtors have a harder education to make sure that they're meeting a certain level of services so people don't feel this way. 100% agree. All those points I agree with. But to take representation away from people, that seems ridiculous. What about how do I feel about the N.A.R. situation? I feel like we were hung out to dry a little bit. I understand why they did this. The copycat lawsuits were coming out of nowhere. They kept coming and coming and coming. And at a certain point, they had to stop. I do feel that N.A.R. folded like a chair. I feel like if somebody like myself was in that courtroom and I was there with those N.A.R. lawyers going against those home sellers, I think I'd crush it. I don't think we'd be in this boat. I think the N.A.R. should have spent more money and hired better representation, but they didn't. But I can't cry about this. I'm mad. You can obviously tell from this podcast that I'm pissed off about what's going on with this. But at the end of the day, I feel like N.A.R. is somebody that should have had our backs and didn't do the job correctly. They kept going through change over CEOs, and now we're here. And the reality is, for the consumer loses again because people now don't have to belong to N.A.R. The N.A.R. has a code of ethics. It has a book. It has things that we have to adhere to. It has the thing that talks about equal rights. It has a thing about like not being a used car salesman, essentially. It has all these rights that now we don't have to adhere to. That's terrible. So what I feel to people is that like you still, as mad as I am about N.A.R. as well, we got to stick to the code of ethics. We got to stick to making sure that we do right to people. We got to stick to make sure that people are represented. And I'm a big proponent out there. And if you're a buyer or seller watching this, I'm telling you right now, getting rid of buyer's agents is not going to be a good thing for anybody. Anybody. Buying or selling. Nobody wants to spend money. I get it. I don't want to spend money. Right? You go on Amazon, you're price checking everything. I'll take the cheapest one. But sometimes taking the cheapest route isn't always the best. And time again, there's been instances where things have come along to try to eliminate real estate agents. You know, guys, in the early 90s, there was this website that came out. It was called forsalebyowner.com. And everybody went nuts. They said, this is it. This is going to be the end of realtors. We won't need them anymore. We're going to go on the internet. We're going to forsalebyowner.com. We're going to buy a house. And then some people did it, and they realized how terrible it was. And then real estate agents survived. This is like '08 when the bubble burst and the foreclosures happened. And they said real estate agents wouldn't survive. We survived. And like the TikTok and Instagrammers say that we're like cockroaches, in a way we are. We keep coming. But the reason we're cockroaches is because people need us. People need somebody that they could depend on to understand what the value is of the property. People need somebody that they could depend on to make sure that they are represented, to make sure that they are not taken advantage of. People need us because they need to make sure that they make a smart investment. For all the sellers out there that made 50% money on the return on their money, it's because they hired somebody to help them. Now, again, I feel like people hate us because of recent times, but in the bigger picture, real estate agents have always been necessary. And when we talk about where do we go from here, I think the disclosure route is great. I think it's important that buyers know what we get paid. I do think people in the past were afraid to tell a buyer that they were making 2 to 3%. On average, I used to make around 2.5% a deal minus $495. You know, and you may say, hey, why are you making that much money? It's like, well, I could argue why I really don't think I make that much money at all. In fact, I don't feel like I make enough money. I feel like I should charge more. You know, for the record, guys, I have 3 kids. I've never spent more than an hour alone with any one of my 3 children. I left the office last night on a Sunday at 8:30 p.m. I put my one kid that was still up to bed. I didn't get to see the other 2. I ate dinner. My wife went to bed, and I sat up on the internet till 12:30, and then I got up this morning at 4 o'clock. That's my life. And that's what it takes to be the number one realtor. And I don't make enough money to retire. I'll tell you that. But I'll tell you, if you compare what I make to the smallest partner at the shittiest law firm in Chicago that has full benefits, that has PTO, that gets to enjoy life and doesn't work weekends, I don't even come close to making what they make. The average realtor makes $50,000 a year. I think the problem is it's a perception problem. I think the problem is, and this is for real estate agents out there, is when you get your license, don't go out and buy a Range Rover and put on a nice suit and act like you make a bunch of money because people hate you for it. Now, if you're the biggest realtor in the country and you want to do that, great. But the reality is that's what people have. It's a perception problem. We have to make sure that buyers feel like they're getting value. And for every buyer out there, if you want to understand like why it's so important to have a realtor, look at all my points. But also, make sure that you interview harder. I think us realtors having buyer agreements signed is a good thing. I think showing your value, what we're doing is I'm making a buyer's agreement that literally lays out line by line what I'm going to do for you to show you why I'm worth every penny and more. And I'm going to put it on paper, and I'm not going to just have you sign it, but I'm going to show it to you. We're going to have a canceling time policy in our buyer agreements as well. So if you feel like I'm ever not bringing you that A-game service, get rid of us. My father told me something that I think is probably one of the best pieces of advice I've heard about this whole situation. My dad said since the dawn of man, sellers have had to negotiate their commissions with sellers. Buyers will now have to do the same thing. And it doesn't mean that sellers are going to stop paying commissions, because I don't think they're going to. I really don't. I think short term in certain parts of the country they will. But I think long term, when that market turns and that house is sitting, they're going to be singing a different bill. But in the whole of this, I think it's great that buyer's agents are going to have to show their value to their buyers. And if you're a buyer's agent out there and you're not bringing your A game, guess what? I will. And for everybody else out there, you can guarantee that your service level is going to get stepped up. And I'm fired up because I want to make sure that each and every person out there that does have that dream of home ownership has that opportunity to do so, but in a way that they feel like they're getting great representation. So that's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully this was a little bit more clear on my thoughts of the settlement, why I feel like buyer's agency is so important, and why I feel like, hey, at the end of the day, showing and proving your service is worth it. Thanks for listening to Laricy Live.